The bandwidth for this episode of Gun Guy Radio is sponsored by the Firearms Radio Network. Firearmsradio.tv.
Welcome to episode 98 of Gun Guy Radio. This is the podcast that shines a positive light on the firearms lifestyle. I'm your host, Jake Chatland, and this is your weekly dose of positive firearms talk without the politics. Brownells helps make this episode of Gun Guy Radio possible. Selection, service, satisfaction. Find it all at Brownells. Go to gunguyradio.com/satisfaction. Well, if you can't tell, I'm still a little bit under the weather. Had quite the week this week. Whole family came down with the flu, and that leads me into the announcements because I have a couple shout-outs because Mike Emmert, Derek, and Joe, thank you so much for bailing me out of this week's This Week in Guns program. You guys did an awesome job and really appreciate you helping me out. That was the evening full force came down with the flu, and the previous let's see, it was the previous evening, or maybe it was 2 evenings before when the family had it. Shout out to Ryan Cross, Derek, and Tony for bailing me out on the Gun and Gear Review podcast. I had to run home and take care of the family. Big thank you to you guys. And if you haven't checked out the Gun and Gear Review podcast, go ahead and check that out. That's on the Firearms Insider TV website, firearmsinsider.tv/podcast, or you can search Gun and Gear Review podcast in iTunes. It's awesome new program. It's going very well. We changed the programming up a little bit to more of a roundtable panel review discussion, which works really well with three people or so. So that's how we're going to run it. And, Ryan Cross is going to take over as the main host over there. So congrats to Ryan and congrats to Devin. He's been promoted to senior producer of the Gun and Gear Review podcast. So very exciting. Next week we're having, I believe, one or two other new panelists on. So each week we have maybe different panelists to pick from to have on the show. And if you're interested in being a panelist on the Gun and Gear Review podcast, shoot me an email, jake@firearmsradio.tv. And also, if you haven't checked out This Week in Guns, it's thisweekinguns.com. Well, that brings us to our Duluth giveaway. So we're giving away $100 gift cards, and we're giving one of those away this week. And you can enter by leaving us an iTunes review or by buying the Firearms Radio Network's Android app on the Google Play Store and sending me your receipt. You have to send me the receipt if you buy the Android app. Otherwise, I don't know you've done it for the contest. So you can leave us an iTunes review or buy the Android app and shoot me a receipt for that. And I drew a name randomly this week, and it was an iTunes reviewer by the username SDE Young. So he or she's a winner of this week's $100 Duluth Trading Company's gift card, which can buy you many of the awesome products over there at Duluth Trading Company, the free swinging flannel, the ballroom jeans, maybe the flannel lined ballroom jeans, which are extra comfy and warm this time of year. I'm wearing a pair right now, and they really make a difference. It's been super chilly here, so I've been very thankful for the Duluth Trading Company ballroom flannel lined jeans. And SDE Young, shoot me an email. Let me know what your shipping address is for this $100 Duluth Trading Company gift card. And you can enter again by leaving us an iTunes review or buying the Android app and sending me the receipt because this is the last week to enter. This giveaway ends the 19th. I announced the last two winners the 22nd, but I need the final entries to be in the 19th for it to get into the in time for the recording and everything. So you have till the 19th. So hurry up, enter now, right now. Stop what you're doing. Pull off side of the road. Enter the Duluth Trading Company $100 gift card because I'm drawing two winners next week. Well, that brings us to the main topic. And this week I had Brandon Maddox back. I remember a couple episodes ago I had him on from FFL 123, but he's also the owner, CEO, founder of Dakota Silencer, one of the largest silencer suppressor distributors, I guess, or dealers. I think dealer is the right term, based out of the Dakotas. And we talked a little bit about silencers, a little bit about the decibel ratings, some of the frequently asked questions about acquiring silencers, and maybe even how to check your status of your Form 4 at the ATF, and all kinds of good information. So we'll get right into the main topic after this. All right, well, welcome back, Brandon Maddox of Dakota Silencer. Had you on a few episodes ago talking about FFLs, but back by popular demand. How you doing, Brandon?
Good. Thanks for having me back.
So I guess you actually had a few listener questions about Class 3 stuff, and so...
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, after we did the FFL123.com, I got a lot of questions. They said, this is somewhat unrelated, but we see you do silencers, so it's fun.
Well, so let's dive right into it. So silencers are legal? What?
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. I'd say I spent the first year working gun shows kind of explaining to people they were legal. Most people think they're illegal. Some states, there's 11 states that have state law that says they are not legal. Some of those states will say if you're a dealer, you can have them. So there's some nuances there. But yeah, so in 39 states, they're basically, from federal law, they're fine. And in state law, there's 11 states that, you could probably guess that voted, they have state laws against them. But yeah, they continue to get more and more popular. So
yeah, it seems like in the last, just 2 to 3 years alone, they've really taken off.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, most people that know anything about the silencers realize that there's a $200 federal tax to purchase it. And essentially it's a transfer tax to transfer. The best way I like to explain to customers is they like the analogy of buying a silencer is like similar to buying a truck. You get a title, and it's basically titling that silencer from our business into usually or sometimes the customer's name, or sometimes people will buy them other ways. But I think the reason why they've gotten more popular is people are talking about them more, but also I think that $200 tax was created in 1934, and back then it was equivalent to about a 6-month salary. So it was really a deterrent to keep people from buying them. But now $200 due to inflation is not as much, so they've become very popular. Especially, I think it helps that Remington bought one of the companies that make silencers, and I think they've done a great job of, working to get the word out and, having their catalogs with, guns come already threaded, ready for silencers and things like that.
Right. That's something else you've really seen in the last couple of years is a lot of threaded pistols, rifles.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things you never would have seen before, like a lot of Rugers that are threaded.
Yeah.
10 years ago, never would have seen that. So
exactly. And it is beneficial to get one threaded because a lot of those pistols have like a little sight on the front. So, the cost of getting it threaded and then moving it back or getting a new barrel is just better almost to get one that's already threaded. Right.
You can even get like threaded 1022s now and Ruger Mark IIIs. So
yeah, absolutely.
They're becoming more popular. What would you say are kind of 2 or 3 main purposes you see people buying them for?
Yeah, good question. So I find, I'm up in the northern part, so a lot of people up here hunt with them. and they mostly hunt coyotes and prairie dogs, so kind of for varmints. I'd say that's the biggest. I'd probably say maybe 85% of my customers, that's what they use them for, is hunting. And really the benefit with the coyotes is if they're calling in the coyotes, they're able to get more than one shot. And if there's more than one coyote, they're able to shoot more than one. The interesting thing is the bullet's still going to break the sound barrier. So the coyotes, when you're shooting at them, they're going to hear it. But what I find is they can't tell where the actual bullet's coming from. And I've had guys come up to me and say, hey, I had 3 or 4 coyotes come up and I shot one, and the others were looking at, they couldn't tell where it came from, so they didn't know which direction to run in. So it helped them get that additional shot. I got into it for prairie dogs. I lived in Florida before I moved out here to South Dakota. I'd never heard of a prairie dog, but I enjoy shooting them, and there's a lot of benefit of not having to wear any ear protection. So you could just shoot all day long. I mean, we could shoot 400, 500, 600 rounds a day at prairie dogs. So the benefit of being able to talk to your buddies and not have to have earplugs is a nice benefit. Plus, it's the same as the coyotes. The prairie dogs, they don't seem to, they don't hear the sound impact as much, so they hang out longer. So most people up here hunt with them. I'm originally from the South, so a lot of people in the South will put them on short barrel rifles. Just, short barrel rifles are so loud. People target shoot with them too. You'll see that it increases your accuracy. It'll tighten your bullet groups, and it's not the silencer itself. It's just the weight of the silencer on the end of the barrel. So people that target shoot, they like for that, especially long distance. So the major benefits, I'd say, are hunting. I have a lot of guys who just come to me and say, hey, I want to protect my hearing. I had a father who lost his hearing, so I think the hearing protection's a big thing. Probably, I think some people get them just because they look cool.
Right. Well, let's touch on the sound, because I think there's some misconceptions within that itself that, because from the movies we see that it makes it completely silent, or sound like absolutely. A BB gun, where not every silencer is the same as far as noise reduction goes, and they don't necessarily make it silent either. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Correct. Yep.
Why don't you touch on that? So, silencing a 22 versus silencing like a 50 BMG or something real big.
Okay.
You're going to have different outcomes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so 141 decibels is when you start having damage to your hearing. And think of it as 141 a pulse. It's just that blast. And a lot of people talk about sound. There's lower amounts of sound that if they were consistent over a long period of time would also cause hearing damage. But sort of the industry standard and the OSHA standard is 141. So if you're at 141 decibels or higher, you're going to have hearing damage. So probably the question I get a lot is how do they quiet down the larger calibers? And essentially what they do is they just make the silencers longer in most cases, or fatter, the diameter wise. But your question on 22, so a 22 rifle like a Ruger 10/22 is going to be right around 140 decibels. So it's like right below sort of that hearing damage level. So that's what a Ruger 10/22 would be without a silencer. But you can get it down to like say 115. I've seen them, 112 with a silencer. And the quietest one that you can find is an integrally suppressed, where essentially they shorten the barrel and then they put a sort of a tube over the barrel and then they put stacked baffles in the end. I mean, I like to call it mouse fart quiet. I mean, it's really, it's an interesting experience. Anytime I do any kind of demo shoots, people love shooting the integrally suppressed Ruger 10/22s. And I'm not kidding when I say a lot of times I'll spray some oil in there so that when I shoot it, I can actually see the bullet hit the white paper, because sometimes you won't hear it go off. It's a weird feeling to pull a trigger and not really hear it go off. Really, the goal of all the other calibers is to get it to 140 or less. And some of the 50 BMGs will say they're not hearing safe, and some of them will say they are. So really, they're saying they're going to get you around 139 or 140 decibels, and so it does typically get it to hearing safe. You'll find that bolt action.
I guess I'll have to shoot one to believe it. I can't imagine a 50. Because a few years back, I had the privilege of shooting at a 50 BMG, and I probably won't do it again until I get a chance to shoot one with a silencer on it.
Oh, and I'm telling you, they're huge, though. I mean, I started buying some of the Barrett silencers that Barrett actually makes. They're huge. I mean, they're, 12, 14 inches long and, diameter 2.5 inches. I mean, they are huge. So, yeah, it's funny, I guess, being up here this far north, anytime I'll order a 50 BMG silencer, the manufacturer's like, we don't sell that many except to you. But I'd say we probably sell 50 of them a year, believe it or not. Silencers just for 50 calibers.
Wow. Holy cow.
And there's different ones if you're shooting a bolt action or a semi-automatic. Of course, with a semi-automatic on the 50, you need something a little bit stronger. Not all of them are rated for that. So, but yeah, to your point, typically the silencers are made to the caliber, and the goal is to always get the hearing sound down. What's really popular now, I'm noticing, is more and more people are buying our 308 silencers, and then they're using it pretty much on all their rifle calibers. And when I say rifle calibers, I don't mean rimfire. I mean like 223 and up. So guys will, buy the 308, and then they'll use it on everything in between, the 223 all the way up to the, even a 300 Win Mag.
So there's some, I guess, universality there. Is that a word?
Yeah.
But let's go back to the decibel ratings. So
Sure.
you actually there at Dakota Silencer have a decibel meter. I guess it's a professional device that not many people have.
Yeah, exactly. The industry standard, believe it or not, is an analog tester. And it's sort of what the mil specs are created around. And there's really only 2 meters. There's a B&K and there's a Larson, and they're both rated for testing the decibels. I guess there's a little bit of controversy around that. The theory is that if you call these experts that make these meters, you got to have something that can read that blast, and they'll call it the rise rate. So that blast is so quick that it's hard to find a microphone that can measure that sound that quickly. Like if it was an industrial machine and it was a consistent sound, it's easier to get meters to test that. But to actually find a meter that can test that rise rate that quick, it's hard to get. So the reason why I bought the B&K microphone is because pretty much everyone in the industry has used it for so long that you can feel comfortable taking a measurement, and then you can kind of do an apples to apples comparison to other silencers that have been tested in the past. So it gives you some confidence that it was done correctly. It's the same one that Silencer Research uses, and a lot of the people who are in the industry do that. I mean, there's some newer ones out that say that digital works just as well, and they think it fits the military specs. I'm skeptical. Maybe it's because I spent $15,000 on mine, and I am proud of it. It's funny. Through FFL123.com, I was working with a guy that's works at one of the TV shows that they do a lot of firearm stuff, and I told him, I said, you guys need a real tester on your show. It was Sons of Guns, and he was kidding with me. He said, you got one? And I said, and then it's Sons of Guns. They called us on a Friday, and we had it shipped to them overnight, and they used it Saturday in one of their TV shows. But
awesome.
So no, I think it's important to make sure you have the right testing equipment. So like I said, just so you can do apples to apples to what's been tested in the past. And the Silencer Research has what I feel like is the most extensive. He hasn't done a whole lot of recent studies, but there's a lot of studies done on there where he uses that meter consistently. And I think it's he's got a lot of unbiased reports on there that you can look at.
So I noticed that something you put on your website is that all the silencers you sell on Dakota Silencer are hearing safe.
Correct.
They're all going to reduce the sound to below 140 or so?
Yeah, 140 or less, exactly, yep.
Okay. What's the lowest you've ever seen a silencer produce?
The 22s, if you use a bolt action, I've seen like 110 or 112 decibels. So bolt actions are always quieter because all the gas has to go through the end, through the baffle structure in the silencer. So, if you're going to use a bolt 20, so I always tell people that my 22-250 is quieter than my AR with the same silencer, just because all the gas has to go through the end on the 22-250. So, and the quietest silencers are always stacked baffles pretty consistently. You can make it longer, but you'll find it's more efficient if it's stacked baffles. In other words, the baffles are machined and they're individual baffles, whereas some manufacturers will make what they call a monolithic baffle, where they take just a solid rod and they machine out the baffles out of one piece.
Oh, very interesting. Well, let's hit on some of the FAQs that people may have, some of the frequently asked questions that
Sure.
maybe someone, is listening to this show or watching the show, and they're like, well, it looks like, they're legal in my state, and then what are some of the other questions people come up with?
I think a lot of people, I hit on it a little bit about how you actually purchase it. A lot of people think that you have to get like a Class 3 license, or I think a lot of people come up to me at gun shows and they have this theory in their mind that it's kind of like a cinema ticket, that once you get your ticket, then you show up and you buy the silencer, which is not correct. Like I said, the best analogy is, think of it as you're actually purchasing a truck and you have to have a title for it. And I always explain that essentially I've got a title to the silencer in my business's name, and I have to transfer that title to either your name, or some people will do a trust, but let's just say we're going to transfer that silencer into your name. Well, the ATF has to approve that transfer, and they'll do a background check as part of that transfer, and they're going to charge $200 to do that transfer. So essentially they have a database where they have all the serial numbers of all the silencers in there, and they know exactly who has it. And at this point, they'll say, I have it, and we have to actually transfer it into the customer's name. And then we give them a heads up when it's approved and they come pick it up, or we actually even have a process where we can mail it to them. So I think that's the biggest question we get, is how do I actually buy it? And it's, some people don't like this idea of having to put money up front to buy one, but the way we look at it is, it's in our vault. We paid for it. We own it. It's going to sit in our vault. We're kind of holding on it for you. And once you buy it, it's yours, because it's serialized. So that serial number is yours. So that's one big question is that, how do I actually buy it? A big question is, how long does it take? And I don't want to date your presentation here, because every time you call, anytime you ask, that number sort of changes. But I can tell you, when I first started this business, it was 3 weeks to do a transfer from myself to a customer. That's what the average was. So they've done a lot of hiring recently, and I think that's going to help the numbers. But right now, the waits have been significantly longer. But obviously, my goal is I get it back down to a 3 week period would be great.
Well, yeah, significantly, as in almost a year, right? In some cases.
I'm seeing ours are coming back right now at about 8 months, but it just varies. I mean, I think another hard part is a lot of people will buy a silencer and they don't realize their dealer hasn't bought it yet. So sometimes it might take 3 months for their dealer to get it, or longer, and then the dealer sort of sends the paperwork in after that. So, we do a little different. We try to buy a whole lot in the beginning, and we typically know what our serial numbers are before we actually get them in the vault, so we can kind of keep the paperwork moving. But that's why it's good to, try to get a feel for if the dealer, they'll tell you they have it in stock, but, the question is, did they really? Because that sort of adds to the delay, and, ATF gets a bad rap, which I feel like they should get, because it's taken them so long to do it. But some of it could be the dealer too. The dealer may not have had it in stock, and they might have, some dealers wait till they sell 10 and now they get a discount on those 10 and then they buy them, and the customers already gave them the money 6 months ago.
So do you have to buy it from a local dealer?
Good question. It's like a handgun. You can only buy from a dealer licensed in your state. So essentially, I'm licensed in South Dakota, North Dakota, Wyoming, and Nebraska, and we're working on Montana. So I can only sell to residents of those states.
Okay. Well, we're counting those other 35 states, and
yeah, exactly.
All set.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
So I can't buy it online and transfer, because I could buy on Gunbroker. I could buy a pistol in any state essentially and have it transferred. So you can't do that from a dealer.
Yeah. Yes and no. Good question. So the silencer shop, I helped him to get his FFL and SOT. He's sort of a wholesaler of silencers. So if you go to silencershop.com, and, essentially he competes with me. So what he's doing is he's marked his prices down in hopes that, say, somebody in South Dakota would buy it from him. But then he would have to transfer it to me, which can take a little while, and then I'd have to transfer it to the customer. So
now, do you have to pay a tax stamp each time you do that?
No, as a dealer, you don't. So as a Class 3 dealer, I don't have to.
Okay.
You know, it's helped a little bit recently. The ATF has gone to e-filing. So I'm finding that when I do a transfer to another dealer, because we sell a lot of stuff wholesale, our volume is big enough that, you know, through FFL123.com, I get a lot of people who buy directly from me. So we resell a lot of silencers, and right now we're seeing 3 weeks between dealers. And it's because it's digital. The ATF has moved to a digital process. So in that scenario, if someone bought one online, they'd have to have it transferred to me. And then that could take, 3 weeks or whatever, assuming that dealer has it in stock. And then I could do the transfer to them. So, of course, the flip side of that is if you called me and said, hey, I found this silencer online at this website, typically I'm going to say, well, the price I'm going to charge you to transfer it is probably how much you think you're saving by getting it through him. Why don't we just save the whole hassle of, delaying it by a month or more by getting it through him, and you can get it from me. So it just, it kind of varies.
Right. Well, I was kind of thinking someone possibly could be in a situation where their local dealer isn't into silencers at all. And
right. And you have to be a Class 3 dealer. So what I have is they call it an SOT, Special Occupational Tax. So I like to think of it as an upgrade to my FFL. So essentially I paid $500, and that $500 is every July 1st. It used to be on some kind of tax code system that renews every July 1st. It's not prorated. So if I paid it, in January, when it comes due July 1st, I have to pay it again.
It's like my fishing license. Ugh.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what allows us to be, it's underneath the tax code. So the interesting thing is, if you go to the ATF website, you can find a list of all 76,000 FFL dealers in the country with all their contact information and everything. But the SOT dealers, the Class 3 dealers, you can't find that because it's protected underneath sort of the IRS.
Interesting. So how do you find a Class 3 dealer?
Yeah, good point. You could do a Google search. I mean, we have a website, class3dealers.com, and we've tried to sort of put a list of all of them that we could find. Basically, I paid someone in India to, visit every manufacturer's website and copy and paste all the dealers and then sort of merge them and remove duplicates. But, you can search for Class 3 dealer and then whatever state you're in, or go to some of the major manufacturers, look at their website as to who they have listed as dealers, or you could try that class3dealers.com. It's got an IP detector in there that tries to detect what state you're in, and it just shows you a map of the ones in your state.
Yeah, and amazingly, there's some in Illinois.
Hey, yeah, exactly, yeah.
I decide I'm buying a silencer. Let's say I live in Texas.
Yep.
And I find a local dealer. And I find the one I want to buy, and then what?
Good question. So I can tell you how it'd work if you bought it from us. Is that all right?
Sure.
Yeah, because I don't know how other people do it. But, okay, so say, for instance, someone buys a silencer from us, and typically it's at a gun show or over the phone or through our website. The next step is we send them the paperwork, because you got to transfer that serial number from us to them. So there's one sheet of paper that's printed on the front and back. It's called a Form 4. You send that to the ATF in duplicate. So essentially, I'd mail you 2 of those. Then there's a U.S. citizenship form. Basically, you're just certifying you're a U.S. citizen. So you fill that out, and then you get fingerprints done. They want 2 fingerprint cards, so you just go to your local sheriff. And then also you have to get sort of passport photo, the 2-inch by 2-inch standard passport photo. And you put all that together, and one part is you do have to get they call it a chief legal enforcement officer signature, a sheriff's signature, and basically he signs that. Then you send it all back to us with a check for $200 to the feds, and that starts the ball rolling. So then we sign it, we put a serial number on it, and we send you a card letting you know what your serial number is. We send you a phone number to the ATF where you can sort of get updates on where that is in the process. You give them that serial number, they'll tell you where it is sort of in their world. Yeah, I skipped over one thing somewhat intentionally, but that sheriff's signature is hard in some places. You mentioned Texas. There's parts of Texas that for whatever reason the sheriff won't sign for them. My understanding is it goes back to, think back to 1930s when this was created. There was no national felony database. So they kind of relied on the local sheriff to say, hey, does this person have a felony? Because they didn't really have a way to know back then. And the way that Form 4 reads now is actually they're asking the sheriff that. Is it all right for this person to buy this? And although the answer is typically yes 100% of the time, for whatever reason, some sheriffs have sort of, I don't know if it's banded together, but some have said, hey, we don't want silencers in our area, so we're not signing them. Some will say it's administratively, we don't have time to sign all these things. So there's a lot of big debate about that, especially, Obama's got an executive order right now sort of looking at that as well. So
right, and in the past, the way to bypass that was to put it inside a trust.
Exactly, yeah.
And that ability may be going away. Is that right?
The trust will still be there, but they're going to require that there be a background check on the people on the trust, which makes sense. And then also they're going to have the sheriff sign that those are your fingerprints and your photos. So that's the big sticky issue right there, is the sheriff's involvement. See, where I live, it's not a big issue. I mean, with the exception of Omaha, Nebraska, pretty much all my geography, all the sheriffs sign. They don't have any problem with people owning silencers. But in other parts of the country, we're really good friends with the people at North Carolina Silencer, and they've got issues. 90% of their customers can't get a sheriff to sign off on it. I think what you're going to see is that chief legal enforcement officer can be defined differently. I mean, like, we have a county attorney that, he can sign for them. So there's that chief legal enforcement officer. Everyone has sort of thought it's a sheriff, and they've always gone to the sheriff. But there's other people that can sign that. And I think that's going to become more important if this stuff goes through as planned. Because if you can't get a sheriff to sign it, then essentially you couldn't buy it. So you could find someone else maybe that fits that same ATF definition, and you could get like a judge, or there's a lot of different other people that they may have to seek out and find.
That's interesting. That might be good news for some, actually. So
true.
Picked out the silencer. We found the dealer. We got the paperwork in. We're just waiting now.
Yeah, I used to tell people to get their barrels threaded. I mean, a lot of our silencers we sell are rifles, so it makes sense that while you're kind of hanging out and waiting, I've sort of changed my opinion on that. I think it's important for the person threading your barrel to actually have the silencer, because they can thread that barrel perfectly for that silencer. And then I find that if people do that, we rarely get a call back. I think one other caution, too, is a lot of people, we talked earlier about pre-threaded barrels. One example is just your basic AR-15. A lot of them have flash hiders on the end. That flash hider comes right off, and then that's a standard threads for like an AR silencer. Interestingly enough, I probably get 2 calls a year if someone had a problem, and it's usually from a factory threaded AR-10 or an AR-15. And I think that the best way to understand that is that when the manufacturer threaded that, they didn't anticipate a silencer going on there. They just anticipate a flash hider. So maybe their quality assurance or they weren't worried about tolerances there, because the opening on the end of that flash hider is, rather large. Whereas with a silencer, typically the center of that silencer is a millimeter bigger than the bullet. So you've got a little bit of wiggle room in there, but not a whole lot, especially if it's not aligned correctly. So one recommendation I have is take the silencer in once you get it approved with the gun or guns that you're going to have it put on, and get it threaded. And make sure you get someone to check it, even if it's already threaded, because what you don't want is to shoot it and then, it comes off. The bullet hits something inside and creates issues.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
No, absolutely not. Yeah.
I've seen some pictures online about people shooting a larger caliber through a smaller caliber.
Wow, yeah. Yeah, crazy.
So I completely forgot what I was going to ask you.
So you were sort of following the scenario of, they're waiting for it. I do sense a lot of people get frustrated. They're waiting for it and they don't know what to do. I'd say ask your dealer or do a Google search for the NFA branch, the ATF NFA branch, and there's a phone number that, you can call directly, and they'll give you an update on your actual silencer. Actually, that's 2 of the questions I got were, I'll see if I can find a number real quick. The 2 of the questions I got from people who heard me on the last thing is they asked me, hey, how do you actually get an update? So the number that they can call, it's in West Virginia, so it's going to be based on that time zone, but it's area code 304-616-4500. Again, it's 304-616-4500. And that's basically someone mans that phone, believe it or not, fairly early and fairly late. I want to say 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And if you give them your serial number, typically they can tell you the status. On that Form 4 that we talked about earlier that you need to fill out, there's a little check mark down about, I don't know, 3/4 of the way down on that Form 4. And if the dealer checks the box that there's a do or do not, and basically it allows it allows you to call and get updates. I can't think of a reason why a dealer would check do not, but most dealers check, do allow updates. And then if the customer calls in, they're going to ask you for your serial number, and they'll tell you an update as to how much longer it's going to be until they anticipate it getting approved. My experience from a dealer perspective, they usually add a couple months to the end of that, which usually pisses the customers off, but it makes us look good because we always beat the timeline that ATF gives people as to how much longer it's going to take. And I do think it's beneficial to call. I mean, I've had customers call me and say, hey, they said there's a problem in my application. Really? No one told us. And then we can kind of get involved and try to troubleshoot it. So, I'm not one of these kind of people that wants to call and know where mine were at when I was buying them years ago as a customer, not a dealer. But I do think there's some benefits to calling yourself and figuring out what's going on with it and getting a status update. And if there is a problem, you can help troubleshoot it.
Or maybe it could be the squeaky wheel. Would that help?
Yeah. I don't know. You got some guys that say, I'm afraid to call. They'll put me at the bottom of the pile. But, I tell you, it does help. I mean, I have guys call every day that say, hey, mine got approved yesterday. When do you think it'll be in? Or, hey, can I come get it? So-and-so. And it usually means it'll be in our mail in about a week or two after it's approved.
Now, do you have to go through this process for each Class 3 device that you buy?
Yeah. Yep. So think of it as an NFA transfer. So, each time it's the same process, which is unfortunate. I mean, you got to figure they got your fingerprints on file. ATF would tell you that, each time something could have happened during that time. In other words, someone could have committed a crime or could have had something come up on their record that before they didn't have. But, you got to figure they're in the database somewhere. They would have to have known that. When you renew your federal firearms license every 3 years, they do a quick NICS check on you. So it's not really automatic. It's just every 3 years. But I don't know how they do with silencers. If there was a way for them to occasionally touch base and make sure you're still eligible to own it.
Well, it is a tool of assassins. So, you got to be careful.
Yeah.
So I think we covered most of the Class 3 topics here. Is there anything else you can think of that we should hit on? I want to move on to some of the silencers that you sell and talk about them, but before we do,
if there's any complaint I get, it's about other dealers. So I would just say do research on who you buy from. I mean, that's not a plug for me per se. I just sense so much frustration out there. I don't know if it's a lack of communication or a lack of hand holding or an information vacuum, but it seems like I get a lot of complaints about dealer did this, dealer did that. I'd say, spend some time. I think in the past people have thought, well, there's only one dealer in my area, so I'm going to go with them. I would just do a little research, maybe try to find people who bought from them before and, just gain insights. It's a lot of gun dealers don't like to deal with the NFA stuff because it is a fair amount of paperwork. I mean, I got a lady hired that's all she does all day. So, I think I told you last time my background is a pharmacist, so I guess I'm anal from a paperwork standpoint. But some dealers, I think they're not as good with staying on top of it, and it creates issues, and everyone gets frustrated. So I'm not saying don't pick a dealer, but based on a bad reputation because you don't want someone to lose business just because of that. But I would say, try to talk to them, try to get a feel for if you feel like they're going to be organized. Because as you know, if it's going to take a year to get it and something goes wrong, it could delay it even longer, obviously. So, you want someone who's administratively competent and also someone who's going to be proactive on your behalf. So that's just, something to think about because that's where I hear a lot of frustration from customers is just, people who've bought from someone else in the past. We try to over-communicate because we find if we over-communicate, then we don't hear from anyone. People aren't calling us asking a lot of questions if we're giving them the information that they want before they want it.
So let's kind of wrap this section up, I guess. So for anyone interested in, possibly buying a silencer, I guess the first course of action would be to figure out if they're one of the 39 states where they are legal. So
sure.
What's the best way to do that?
You can go to any of the major manufacturers' websites. I mean, even if you do a quick Google search for AAC, Advanced Armament, they're one of the bigger ones. They're owned by Remington. I'm pretty sure they've got a map on their website of which states are legal and which aren't.
Sure, there's silencersareLegal.com.
Yep, that's another good one. That's sort of an industry trade group gets together and promotes it.
So someone finds out that they're legal, and then they got to track down a local Class 3 dealer.
Yep.
And then we basically said how to get the ball rolling and everything, and then I guess the other big thing is local law enforcement sign off. Or
yeah, good point. Yeah, be sure to ask your local dealer that. Exactly. Yep.
And maybe ask. I don't know. I guess so. It doesn't have to be your sheriff. It could be possibly a judge. You said possibly.
Yeah, or a county attorney. There's a lot of exceptions. I mean, hopefully the dealer is familiar with like the local issues. So if they just say, "Hey, I live in so and so county," is that going to be a problem? They can tell them how to handle that, individually.
Right. Okay. Well, I guess the only other thing is the waiting period, but. You said that they hired 12 new people, so that should be reversing itself.
Yeah, hopefully it helps. And I mean, be honest with you, it's sort of up in the air on that executive order with the trust stuff too. I mean, if Obama says sheriffs have to sign it, and there's sheriffs that say they're not going to sign it, there could be parts of the country where you just don't see any silencer sales anymore, and that could potentially. The staffing they have currently could have less to do, and that could speed it up as well.
If people have questions on silencers, are you taking those questions as well, Brandon?
It's probably better to talk to your own dealer just because, it creates a tough situation because, people ask us what we think, and we're probably opinionated because we've been doing it a while, and then the local person they end up having to buy it from might not necessarily agree. I mean, at the end of the day, we can sell to people from other states and use that scenario you said where we would just transfer it to their local dealer.
If you live in Nebraska, North Dakota, South Dakota, or Wyoming, and soon Montana, you can buy with you guys. So
exactly, yeah, exactly.
Before I let you go, I want to ask you a little bit about the Titanium Varminter 2.0.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mentioned earlier, most of our customers are hunters. And sort of the insight I found when I first started in this business was most silencers were sort of created more traditionally for tactical or military application. And typically their goal was to be hearing safe. So to hit that 140 mark. And what we found is that most of our customers wanted to hunt with them. So their goal is to get it quieter than hearing safe. And what we found is the quieter you can get it, the better it helps with hunting. And it's probably also, obviously you can use the tactical silencers for hunting as well. But I just felt like from a marketing standpoint that we created one that was specifically for hunting. And the other thing is, the Varminter 2.0 is made out of titanium, and the titanium is a better conductor of heat, so it pulls the heat out of the blast more efficiently, so they're actually quieter. So if we build that silencer in all stainless steel and we build it in all titanium and you put them right next to each other, the titanium version not only is it lighter, but it's going to be 3 or 4 decibels quieter, even with the same design.
Now, what does heat have to do with the noise?
Yeah, good point. I mean, if the whole goal of the silencer is to pull the heat out of that blast to slow those gas particles down so that when the gas does come out of the end, it's not, I guess it's probably people that can think of better terms than I am, but basically trying to pull the kinetic energy out of that blast so that those particles slow down. So if you looked at a silencer, you would see it's basically just chambers. And the whole goal is to have a large surface area so that it can pull the heat out of that gas before that gas goes to the next chamber. So every chamber is trying to pull the heat out of that blast as efficiently and as fast as it can so that when the gas does come out at the end, it's slower and it's not going to be as loud. And the titanium is just more efficient at that. And it's also lighter, which a lot of people like, that you don't have as much weight off the end of your barrel. Which, it's funny because the first silencer I bought, I went out and bought the cheapest one I could find. I mean, I couldn't find anyone who had ever hunted with one. So I figured before I go drop the bank, I'm going to buy the cheapest one and see if it works. And once I used it, I was like, wow, this works great. This is awesome. I mean, I was totally addicted. So then I thought, well, how do I get one that's not so freaking heavy? Because the cheapest ones are always, like steel. We got one we sell that's like $425 for an AR, and that's pretty much the one I bought, years ago. But it's so heavy just because it's all steel. So what I did is I bought a smaller silencer. My theory was I'll get a smaller one, but then I found it was a lot louder. There was less room in there for that gas to sort of go through the chambers. And it was so loud that it was noticeably louder that then I wanted to get rid of it. And when titanium has become more and more popular, I think one thing that has slowed the adoption of the titanium is a lot of these manufacturers already have their machines and their processes in place. And the idea of buying a very expensive material like titanium and having to machine it and the tubing, it just drives their cost up so much. I think they have resisted sort of going in that direction. But we found since it's quieter and it's lighter, our customers love it. And you don't see as many manufacturers doing it. I mean, it's sort of a newer thing. But the Varmeter 2.0 has a titanium tube and titanium end caps, but the baffles are actually stainless steel. What we found is you get so much waste when you machine out those baffles that if you use titanium, a solid rod of titanium, and machine out those baffles, it drives up your costs so much more, and you don't really gain that much more with weight because those baffles are machined out so much. There's not a whole lot left there except the sort of the outside of the baffle. So that the tube being titanium and the end caps keeps it light, helps the ability to pull the heat out of the blast, and then the baffles being stainless steel, it's still pretty light because they're machined out. But that's our number one seller. I mean, probably a question a lot of people are going to ask. A lot of people ask in other parts of the country about the quick detach silencers. And basically that is you're going to have like a muzzle brake device that screws onto the end of the rifle, and then you're going to have the silencers are going to connect to that. Whereas mostly what we sell, it screws directly onto the barrel. So if you sit down with someone who's only used to quick detach, they'll argue with you all day that it's the best thing in the world. And then if you go to someone like myself, who we pretty much sell only the screw-on type, I'm going to tell you that's the best. So it's probably just preference. I mean, here's what we find. If it screws on directly to the barrel, we find that the repeatability of the accuracy is better because it always locks in the same place. You screw that silencer on when it's screwed onto the barrel and it locks in place. You just hand tighten it, and every time it's going to stop at the same place. So when you sight your silencer in with your scope, it's always going to be on the same. Whereas quick detach, sometimes that can change. Also, quick detach, the silencers get incredibly hot. I mean, until you have shot a silencer, you don't realize how hot they get. So this theory of being able to take it off and on quickly is totally a misnomer. It's a myth. I mean, that thing gets 700 or 800 degrees in no time. You're not going to you have to have an oven glove to get that off.
Oh, I shoot with oven gloves. That's okay.
Yeah.
So how does that quick detach? When you mention quick detach, I think of an air hose quick detach. Is it kind of like that?
Yeah. Well, air hose, it just sort of pushes on, whereas this is sort of like a ratchet system, like it connects in and then you'll hear a ch-ch-ch-ch. So for me, the downsides of a quick detach are typically they're proprietary to the company you bought it from. So now you're going to throw an extra $100 on each of these adapters. So you're feeding the manufacturer more money, and you also usually have to track them down because sometimes the silencers will come with them, sometimes they won't. That's another hard thing is if you look at a silencer on a manufacturer's website, they'll typically tell you the weight of that silencer, but they don't include what the weight's going to be once you put that quick detach on there, which of course has to be on there. It's sort of like the cell phone plug-ins. It seems like they're always changing. They got one quick detach and they'll tell you it's the best ever, and then the next model comes out and that's a different one.
Right.
So it creates some issues there. And we've had some guys too that they've had trouble with them breaking. The quick detach is not like, I don't know if it's a wear or what it is, wearing down, but they won't work anymore. And then they're kind of stuck because it's hard to sometimes find them that are 10 years old or older. It's hard to find these quick detaches. So for me, we always recommend quick detaches if you have a short barrel rifle, or sometimes if you're using a machine gun, because you don't want that silencer to come loose off the end if you're shooting a machine gun a lot. But some people will say that's a benefit of a quick detach. You don't have to worry about it coming loose off the end. I'll shoot 400 or 500 rounds a day on prairie dogs, and sometimes it will get a little loose, but you just you can hand tighten it down. So that's to me, if I get better accuracy when I screw it on, and it doesn't drive up the cost, because also the quick detaches, some of these guys will buy a quick detach for each gun. So if you spend $100 on a quick detach for each gun, that adds up to the cost of the silencer. So
right. So these Varmint 2.0s, you have them in 223 and 308 versions. And,
Exactly.
I mean, for being titanium, they seem to be a pretty great price point. $695 for the 223 and $855 for the 308.
Yeah, I think what helps is, we order hundreds at a time. So basically we went to these manufacturers and, we took all the research of all the, we talked earlier about our decibel meter. So we tested every silencer that was on the market, and then we took the designs that tested the best as far as being the most efficient. We took them to this manufacturer and said, basically use these as a starting point and help us come up with something that's really, really quiet and also that you can put into titanium. So I think it definitely helps because it's not a big corporation. These guys, they make a lot of higher-end custom guns for other manufacturers, so they're used to putting other people's names on their product. It's the Mack brothers out of Sturgis, South Dakota. They use the company West River Rifle is what they put on them when they make them for us, but most people have heard of them as Mack brothers.
Yeah, they make some really high-end guns, don't they? So
yeah, they work with Badger Ordnance and some of the other. They have a lot of government contracts. They have a lot of pride in craftsmanship, which I know some people look at a silencer and they say, who cares what it looks like? I'm screwing on the end of the gun. But these guys spend a lot of time to make sure it looks really classy on the outside. And we feel like that just helps them sell better. If someone looks at it and go, wow, if they took that much time and effort to make the outside look good, they're going to spend that much time on the inside parts as well.
You guys advertise this as the world's quietest silencer, or your money back guaranteed?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just because we spent so much time testing it. Like I said, a lot of silencers across the country, their goal is just for it to be hearing safe. And for most people, that's probably fine. But what we find for hunting, people want them as quiet as they can get it. The quieter, the better for hunting. So essentially, we just kept working on it. Some people might say, 7.2 inches, you could have made it shorter and it's still been quiet. Yeah, but we know we're the quietest because we made it, a nice length where there's plenty of baffle space in there for the, the gas to dissipate through. They heat treat that first baffle so that it can, handle sort of the limited full auto and also some of the Magnum calibers. The 308's not really rated for the 300 Ultra Mag, although the owner who makes these for me uses it on his. He doesn't like for us to say it's warranted for that, but our 308s are warranted for like the Win Mags, not the Ultra Mags.
Yeah, that's something I wouldn't have thought to take into consideration, whether or not I can use it on more of a powerful cartridge.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about the ability to use on multiple calibers. A lot of guys buy a 308 and then they'll use it on pretty much everything below because of the Magnum rating and because they can use it on, a 223. So one question we get a lot is, okay, so I've decided to buy a 308 silencer. I want to use it on a 223. Am I going to lose some efficiencies? And, typically it's depending upon the design. We have a stacked baffle system, which is typically more efficient. So the reason why you're not going to lose as much efficiency is because they're 2 inches longer. So you have 2 additional baffles in there. So granted, the hole through the center is bigger and you're going to lose some efficiency, but it's going to be less than you think because you got 2 extra inches on the end for the gas to go through in those baffles. So it kind of makes up for the fact that the hole's too big for the 223.
Yeah, this is looking like might be the way to go for a lot of options, really. I mean, it's only the 223 version only weighs 16 ounces, so
right. Yep.
Yeah, I mean that's not bad at all.
Another interesting aside. What we found is a lot of people were buying adapters online that would screw into their because essentially one thing you got to think about is you're going to have different threads on a 308 silencer than you do a 223 silencer. So what I found was people were buying adapters online that would screw into their 308 and then they could screw it on to their 223. And they were having alignment issues. So they were calling me and saying, hey, I've gotten a baffle strike. I got a bullet that brushed the side, the inside of my silencer. And they thought it was a silencer issue. But what we found was it was the adapters was the issue. So it became such an issue that I approached the guys that make our silencers and said, hey, can you make us a very high quality adapter where you basically machine the inside threads and the outside threads at the exact same time on the CNC machinery so that we don't have to worry about any alignment issues. And they said, oh, of course we can do that, but you need to order 10,000 of them for us to justify setting up our machinery to do that. And I was so concerned that, I don't know, that, someone was going to get hurt or a customer was going to get mad that I went ahead and agreed to it. So I ordered, a whole ton of these adapters. And what's interesting is now we sell them on eBay, and we sell a ton of them because people know they have a good reputation of being made right. So although I bought a ton of them and thought I'll probably be stuck with these for the next 20 years, we put them on eBay, and I sell a lot of them. So because we sell so many of them on eBay, I know there's a lot of people out there using 308s on their 223s because, we're selling a lot of the adapters to help them do that.
Well, that's pretty cool. Now I see you sell the 20, and I can never say this word, the internally suppressed 1022. It's made by, I lost it here. Who's that made
Yankee
by?
Hill.
Yankee
YHM.
Hill.
Yeah. Believe it or not, they're in Massachusetts. I mean, silencers are illegal in Massachusetts, but not for dealers. So they make them up there in Massachusetts.
So this thing is pretty fascinating. It's it's your 1022 action. But now, is this it almost looks like a bull barrel, but that's because it's internally suppressed.
If you look at it, you wouldn't even know it was a silencer inside there. So basically they take a 1022 and they put the, the nice whole grip on there that will hold the bull barrel.
Oh, okay.
So they replaced that, and they've got a nice little tool where you unscrew the end and then the baffle structure just slides out.
Really?
Which is which is what you want because, one thing we didn't talk about too much is rimfire is typically dirty. Those bullets are not jacketed. 22 bullets are not jacketed, so you can get lead buildup. So anytime you buy a 22 silencer, you need to make sure you can take it apart and clean it. That's kind of the standard in the industry now. 5 or 10 years ago it wasn't, but that 1022, the end, it comes with a tool where the end just screws out, and you can slide the baffle structure out, and you can dip that whole thing. It's all stainless steel, so you can actually dip it in, a solvent cleaner or whatever, or put it in a sonic bath, clean it, and then just slide it right back in, which is a huge benefit because the first 1022 I bought just had stacked baffles in there, and I honestly could never get them out. I'd take the barrel off. I was running a coat hanger in there trying to push the baffles out, and they sort of get corroded in there and they're difficult to get out. So I think they got a great design. The sad part is I ordered 50 of those last year and sold them at gun shows, and they never came in. So I had to refund a lot of people money because they never came in, but then they came in this year. So I'll have plenty for the gun shows this year, but it literally, because Ruger was so far behind in providing the guns to the manufacturer for them to alter, that it took a year for me to get them in.
YHM behind, because I was curious why they still only have like CAD drawings of these up. They don't have an actual picture of the actual rifle yet.
Oh, okay.
So, but you said you got some in.
Oh yeah. So if you click on the actual picture of it, it should take you right to their website.
Oh, I guess you can see them in action on YouTube.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay. Sure. Yeah. They're super quiet. I mean, when I first got my Class 3 license, my father-in-law and brother-in-law said they wanted one of these. And to me, it didn't make sense because I figured if I'm going to buy a silencer, I want to be able to move it from gun to gun.
Right.
So to me, this didn't seem practical. I said, nah, but then they had some special, you buy 3, you get free shipping. So I bought one, and once I got it, I fell in love with it just because it is so quiet. I mean, it's actually quiet. I have shot right next to guys that were shooting pellet guns, and this was significantly quieter than their pellet guns. Now, they had high-end pellet guns. It's possible we were shooting muskrats. I know you're only supposed to trap those and not shoot those, but we were shooting them off a deck, and those guys had pellet guns, and this thing was significantly quieter. The only time you heard it is when the bullet hit the water.
Wow, that's amazing. What are some of your other favorite silencer brands besides your own?
I like Yankee Hill. They typically are, kind of seen as sort of fair priced. I mean, we're like a major dealer for them, so we order a lot of Yankee Hill. I think they have great stuff. Sometimes if you look at the silencer research, though, Yankee Hill is not too quiet. For whatever reason, their designs are not typically as quiet when you compare them head to head to others. So that's one thing to think about. I really like Elite Iron. Elite Iron is out in Montana. They are really known for their long-range rifles, and I think that, like the 338s and some of the other, even the 50 BMGs, they're getting more and more popular. At least people are buying more silencers from us for the 308s and some of the Shytechs, and I think Elite Iron has done a great job of sort of leading that market for the long-range silencer. So if you're looking for a long-range type, I definitely would look at, Elite Iron. I think they got great stuff. Recently the AWC, the people that make that 50, I think they merged with Armalite, maybe the same company that owns Armalite, the AR-50 company. And AWC makes great stuff. The only thing we really buy from them are their 50s because they're semi-automatic rated. There's not many silencers that are rated for semi-automatic Barretts. You got to be careful. Barrett says that voids your warranty if you use a silencer other than theirs, of course. The new Barretts, the M107A ones, they're silencer ready. So they're made where supposedly their infrastructure or whatever is built to be ready for a silencer, and they have the adapter on the front that holds a silencer. Believe it or not, we sell a lot of those. We sell a lot of the Chris Vectors. I mean, that's a SBR, short barrel rifle, but it's the same process as buying a silencer. A machine gun and also a short barrel rifle is the exact same process. It's part of the National Firearms Act, the NFA. So we do sell, last year we sold a ton of these Chris Vectors because at, $19.95, that's what the ARs are going for. So that looked a whole lot cooler than an AR, a short barrel rifle. So we sold a ton of those.
Well, I see AWC silencers, they make a internally suppressed Ruger Mark III. Yeah,
exactly. And the Yankee Hill used to make one too, and they've, for whatever reason, quit making them. But they're pricey. I've sold, some of them. I think they're beautiful. You just have to look at.
They are, yeah.
They're beautiful. I mean, you have to really look at them close because I bought some that were cheaper that you could tell the barrel when it sort of merged with the rest of the gun, it didn't look right. Whereas that is a smooth finish. I mean, they're pricey though. $15.95. And I have. It seems like every time I buy one of these for myself, someone ends up buying it from me. But they're the only manufacturer I know right now who are actually making one. Yankee Hill used to make them. That's where we used to get them. Huntertown Arms may make one, but yeah, they're hard to get. But they're quiet. They're cool. They look, like you said earlier, it looks like just like a little bull barrel. You wouldn't even know that there's baffles in the end of that.
It does, yeah. What can you tell me about Coastal Guns, that brand?
They're based out of Georgia. We've bought from them, for quite a while. They're out of Brunswick, Georgia. Most of the ones that we buy from them are made out of stainless. Typically it's sort of maybe a person that, kind of like I was when I first got into it, they didn't want to break the bank. They just want to start with something that's, cost effective and give it a try. And if it works for them, maybe upgrade later. They also have come out with some titanium silencers as well that are, nice as far as weight wise and also price. It's funny is these guys come out here every year and prairie dog hunt with us. So they're great to work with. If you have any, thing that has to go back, they can fix it. But they also make, pistol silencers, rifle. They're also known for, making some silencers that are somewhat interchangeable where you can change the ends out and use them on different machine guns. So they've been around for a while. They're great to work with. Not as big as some of the other companies we work with, but that's all right. Never had any problems with their stuff. They'll make a Ruger 1022 for you as well. Some guys will send their whole gun to them and just get it rebuilt. So essentially they'll just mill it down and add the baffles on the end and put a tube on the outside. They do a lot of engraving work for us too. We used to have a manufacturer's license and we'd send everything to them to have it engraved.
Very cool. Thanks, Brandon, so much for
absolutely
coming back on and shooting the breeze about silencers.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's one of those things. If someone hasn't ever shot something with a silencer, they ought to definitely seek out an opportunity where they can. I think they'd be impressed.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned silencer shoots earlier, but yeah, keep an eye out for silencer shoots in your local area where you can go out and check them out. Sometimes open houses at gun clubs, you can check them out there.
Yeah, even sometimes ranges. I was at a range in Tennessee, and they had a situation there where they'd rent you an M16 with a silencer on the end. So you can ask your local range. A lot of times they'll have stuff they'll rent out to you.
Well, Brandon, where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
Yeah, sure. They can email me. It's just Brandon, so BRANDON @ and then it's DakotaSilencer.com. Or they can go to DakotaSilencer.com and just email us through the contact page.
And then also FFL123 if they're interested in.
Getting an FFL or a Class 3. Yep.
Now,
Absolutely.
Let me ask you this question. I'm in Illinois, so if I had a Class 3, could I then have silencers? Yeah,
I've actually bought silencers from Class 3 dealers in Illinois, believe it or not.
So
I can't remember I think it's Gunworks, or I can't remember. There's a gun man. Barrett used to make silencers years ago, and then they quit making them, and now they make them again. But I think there was a guy in Illinois who bought all the old ones, because I bought a few off of him within the last 3 or 4 years. And essentially, if you're in Illinois and you got a Class 3 license, you'd be limited to selling to government agencies or other dealers. I mean, I sell a fair amount of silencers to the gun fishing parks. So there's some opportunity there.
Now, how does that work if so I'm a Class 3 in Illinois. Am I the only one allowed to shoot them?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I don't know what the state law there is. I mean, like, some states will say, you may not purchase. Some states will say you may not purchase or possess. Even recently, Minnesota passed a law where dealers could have them. So, typically they say if you're still with it, like, someone could be with you and use it, but as long as you're there with them. It seems to be a loose, if you call the ATF or NFA, the hard part is if you ask 3 people, you'll get 3 different answers.
Right.
So, I don't know what the actual state law would be there, but typically if you're still with it, you're fine. In other words, if somebody's out there with you shooting it. Because they say that, so I'm a Class 3 dealer, and my wife and I are the only one on our FFL, and that's because it's set up as a limited liability corporation, and she owns half of it. But if you call the NFA branch of ATF, they'll say that any bona fide employee can have possession of a silencer and can technically do demos. So the lady that works for me, interestingly enough, she's kind of a gun nut herself. So technically she can take the silencers home with her, and even the machine guns, because she's a bona fide employee. And my lawyer and CPA say that means that I take taxes out on her. So in other words, she's actually, truly employed. It's not a, it's legal, she's a bona fide employee. So yeah, she can have possession of anything that the corporation owns.
Well, very interesting. May have opened some options for me.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, perfect.
Well, thanks, Brandon, so much.
Yeah, thanks, Jake.
We'll talk soon.
All right, sounds great. Thanks, man.
Well, again, shout out to Brandon Maddox for coming on Gun Guy Radio again and sharing his vast knowledge of silencers and other things related to Class 3. And we may have him back to talk a little more about Class, maybe how to acquire Class 3 license, maybe more about SPRs and things of that sort.
Ballroom jeans, fire hose work pants, and long-tail tees are 3 favorites among the men of Gun Guy Radio. Duluth Trading Company has perfected the art of clothing the manly man. If you want manly comfort that's trusted by these gun guys, go to gunguyradio.com/Duluth and check out the other manly essentials Duluth Trading Company offers gun guys like us.
So that brings us into the product spotlight, where we talk about the Brownells AR-15 Critical Tools Kit.
I know we talk about AR-15s a lot, but these are kind of the fundamental tools if you plan on getting into building your AR-15, especially barreling an upper or working on your lower receiver. If you buy a strip lower and a lower parts kit, you probably need some of these tools. So what we got is the AR-15 Critical Tool Kit. I'll start off with the main item. I actually use this item the most out of my kit. It's the upper receiver block. And now this critical toolkit comes with all these I'm about to show you. I believe it retails for $99, and it's pretty all-encompassing. You're not really going to go wrong with it. But this is essential basically for installing a barrel or a new handguard on an upper receiver, and even, flash hiders and muzzle devices, and to that extent, gas blocks. It makes life a lot easier if you can clamp the upper in a block like this. You're not torquing it, doing anything goofy with the upper receiver, which is soft aluminum. You clamp on the side without this block or something silly, you're going to crush it or destroy it. And on that note, I brought in a raw upper here so you can kind of contrast and actually see the parts and how they're used. With the block, it does come with an insert to prevent crush into the upper receiver. So before you clamp the block on, insert this and then place a block over, just so you're not crushing the aluminum walls of the upper, and then you have a worthless upper receiver. Then you have a nice paperweight.
That's how you make it match grade fit, right?
Yeah, it'll definitely be tighter. Not necessarily. It's probably not a good tight. But you'll see here the block is cut out. It fits A3, A4 flat top upper receivers, and you'll see up here it has a cutout as well for your A2 or A1 upper receiver. So this block will work with pretty much any AR-15 upper receiver out there, unless you have a really odd receiver. It should even work with the DPMS tall, low pro upper receivers that have a higher rail on them.
Right, and it's carved out so that it's got it's got a place to fit against the the dust cover on the one side.
Yep. And there you go. There you insert the internal polymer piece, and then this just clamps around. Ejection port cover, you just place that up, and then there your upper's supported. It's not going to go anywhere, and then you can attach your vise and then work on your barrel as needed, or anything else on your upper receiver, really.
Yeah.
So say
yeah,
go ahead.
I used this when I built my first AR-15. It's just a lifesaver. I couldn't imagine using it or building a rifle, from scratch without it.
No, you need some sort of tool. There's a few other tools out on the market, such as the Brownell's barrel extension torque tool. That allows you to attach a barrel a little differently than this. It actually goes into the barrel extension and holds that there. But this is it's so simple. It's easy to understand how it'll function. It's hard to mess this up, too. On installing the barrel, the critical toolkit does include a wrench as well for installing standard GI-style barrel nuts. And that also works with most free float, or a lot of the free float tubes out of the market with the 3 pins there. This is a Smith Enterprises wrench. It's really one of the nicer ones we carry. The coating isn't too thick. It's machined nice and straight, such as the flash hider cutouts. They're going to fit your standard flash hiders. This is a 1/2 inch here, I believe. Maybe a little wider for the flash hiders. And this is for the stock extension on an A2. Then it has a 1/2 inch drive, so say if you're torquing that free float tube barrel nut, you can get it right to the proper torque specification. Same with the GI barrel nut if you're torquing it down to a given specification. Really a pretty nice tool. It's solid. You're not going to break.
It's definitely solid.
Yeah, that's a pretty hefty chunk of steel right there. And nice uniform finish. Really, yeah, pretty handy.
Yeah, if you need a hammer, you could probably use that in a pinch too.
Yeah, and I've used a hammer on these before just to break a barrel nut off and whacked it a bit, and you're not going to damage that wrench. As for while we're on the receiver blocks, it does come with a lower receiver block as well. So in the critical toolkit, you have the upper receiver block and the wrench, and then you have the lower receiver block, which the lower receiver just inserts over this. The lower half is held in your vise, and then you can install pins, take out triggers, do whatever you need on your lower receiver, put on a new stock. This is primarily what I use this for, is swapping out stocks or torquing the stock down. Because without that, it's on your bench. It's sliding around, you're marring your lower receiver. Basically, if you have any of these tools, you're not going to be marring up any of your parts. You can install them correctly and get it done the right way.
Well, I can still manage to mar things up, but it does lessen the likelihood for sure.
Yeah, I'm still pretty good at that occasionally. We do sell brass punches, so maybe that's something you should invest in, the non-marring punches. And then while you're using that, you can also use this roll pin punch. This is used for installing the bolt catch roll pin. So on the lower receiver, on that front portion of the mag well that's a little wider, you can come in from the front and actually get that pin in versus going from the rear, which you need a longer pin or a punch, and then you run the risk of basically this eliminates any possibility of marring your receiver when you're putting in that bolt catch roll pin. So really pretty
still
handy.
Still a good idea to put some electrical or some painter's tape on it.
Yeah,
but
definitely.
That's actually my favorite part in the kit is that punch, because you can use that for more than just that.
Oh, yeah.
You can use it for almost all the punches on the lower. So.
Yep, and you can see there how it's cut out, so you can make it around that raised portion on the lower. And then also there's this. Say you're taking out a front pivot pin on a low receiver. This little it looks like an Allen wrench. Essentially is an Allen wrench, just ground. If you can focus on that there. This allows you to take out that front takedown pin or pivot pin. So you can insert that between the lower and the detent and get that detent out. Because otherwise that's not going to be much fun trying to get that front pivot pin out without this tool. It also allows you to depress the front detent when you're installing it, because otherwise you're not going to get it in, which is where this tool comes in. This is the front pivot pin installation tool. Again, all these parts come in the critical toolkit. This tool allows you to insert the spring and the detent on the front of the lower receiver. You insert them through this hole here, depress the detent and spring, and then rotate it. Then all you have to do is slide the new pin in through the side while this goes out, and it's retained. It'll click in place, and you're good to go. You're ready to assemble your rifle from there. Or go ahead, or you can go from there and scratch up other parts of your rifle.
Yeah, see, that works way better than the way I did the first time. So,
yeah, I've done it without this, and it takes some time. There may be some swearing involved. This will
you might be
remove.
You might be on your hands and knees on the carpet looking for the detent and the spring and all that.
It'll save you the cost of buying replacement springs.
Right, that's for sure.
Yeah. So that's the critical toolkit. Basically everything you need. If you plan on building an AR-15, pick up a critical toolkit because it's going to make your life so much easier. Doing a lot of these tasks without individual tools, it can be frustrating. You can get it done, but you're going to run into some trouble.
Well, and I'm pretty excited because for the Gun Guy Radio giveaway, because we switched to a monthly giveaway instead of a weekly, but we're giving you more. This is one of the things the lucky winner is going to get along with what we're talking about next week. So, you get the Brownells Critical Tools Kit, the action block. I mean, really, all the parts in here are it's almost priceless if you're building an AR, especially for the first time. I mean, this takes a lot of the fear, the headaches out of it. I mean, it really helps a lot.
And every time you buy a new part, too, you'll find yourself using one of these tools. You may not use them all in one sitting, but these are I find myself using these whenever I get a new stock, I get a new barrel, a new gas block, flash hider even. That upper receiver vice block, you need to keep your barrel, your upper receiver attached firmly somewhere, and that's the best way to do it.
Well, very cool. If you want to check out the Brownells Critical Toolkit, we'll have a link in the upper right-hand corner of this video, so you can click the Buy at Brownells link, or in the show notes on gunguyradio.com. Well, thank you, Paul, so much, and we'll talk to you next week.
All right, talk to you then.
And that brings us to the Brownells giveaway. So we have switched from the weekly to a monthly giveaway, but you get 4 times the value because this month we are giving away on December 22nd the Midwest Industries AR-15 Generation 2 SS Series handguard of your choice. black or flat dark, or anywhere from a 7-inch to 15-inch rail size. You get to pick which one you want. And you also get the Brownells AR-15 Critical Tools Kit to help you put your AR-15 together. So you can enter by signing up for the Gun Guy Radio newsletter. If you've already signed up for the Gun Guy Radio newsletter, you're all set. You're already entered. You only have to enter once. So if you have not entered, you can go to gunguyradio.com/winner and sign up for the Gun Guy Radio newsletter. And you don't forget, hurry up and enter for this as well, because this we announced next week, December the 22nd. So you actually need to be entered a few days before that, probably the 19th. Yeah, the 19th you're going to have to be entered by to get in the running for this. But don't worry, even if you enter after the 19th, you'll be entered automatically for next month's Brownells giveaway.
Gun Guy Radio is brought to you in part by Duluth Trading Company, where you can find free swinging flannel shirts, Shoreman's fleece jackets, wild boar footwear, and buck naked boxers. For clothes that are plain built better, go to gunguyradio.com/Duluth. And don't forget to tell them you listen to Gun Guy Radio. Gun Guy Radio says thank you, and proudly displays artwork and graphics designed by Ryan Cross of Hunter of Design. HunterofDesign.com.
Well, that about wraps up the show this week, so don't forget to shop Brownells using our affiliate link, gunguyradio.com/satisfaction. And you can send feedback to Jake at gunguyradio.com, and once we accumulate some feedback, we'll have the guys back on, Steve and maybe Reed, maybe Mike or Hank or Greg, and do another listener feedback roundtable via Google Hangouts. So send your feedback, Jake at gunguyradio.com. And don't forget to purchase your Gun Guy Radio stickers, gunguyradio.com/stickers. And remember to leave us an iTunes review, especially before the 19th, because that will get you into the running for the $100 Duluth Trading Company gift cards. That's right, you can get your own ballroom jeans. And remember to join the NRA and the Second Amendment Foundation if you haven't already. They're out there fighting for our rights on the political front, which we do not talk about on this show, but they are doing it, and we are very grateful for it. And don't forget to also check out all the other great shows on the Firearms Radio Network, firearmsradio.tv/iTunes, and especially Gun Girl Radio, hosted by two world and national champion shooters, Randy Rogers and Julie Gollum. A bi-weekly podcast releases every other Wednesday, and the ladies do a phenomenal job. And I really would like you to check that out at gungirlradio.com or search Gun Girl Radio on iTunes. And that about wraps it up, so we'll see you next week.
This has been a production of the Firearms Radio Network. You can find more information at firearmsradio.tv.